Are you curious about bodies, pleasure, and possibilities? And what about curious about what others are up to on the planet when it comes to pleasure, sex, and play? Have you considered what pleasure can do for your life, your body, and your bank account? Do you know something magical, delightful, and out of this world orgasmic is not only possible for you, but totally available to you? If you're ready to be the magical, sexual, sexy beast you know you can be, and you just need the tools to get there, you're in the right place. Now, here's the host of The Pleasure Zone, sensual movement artist, relationship and sex alchemist, Milica Jelenic.
Welcome, my sweet pleasure seekers. I always like listening to my own title on there. It's quite fun. Relationship and sex alchemist. I created that title myself based on my many years of experience and expertise, and I like it. It doesn't mention on there sex and intimacy coach, but that is ultimately what the title is that I have, along with relationship coach. And I am a holistic health practitioner, and I work with many different types of things in the holistic health field. And one of the things I found that was showing up a lot in my office was people would secretly pull me aside, like men would pull me aside and go, I have this problem. I'm like, do you mean erectile dysfunction? And they're like, oh my God, you know. I'm like, yes, I know about it. I know what that is. And there was always this shyness, but they wanted to know, is there anything like they could take? Is there a herb? Is there a pellet? Is there this? Is there, and there's so many options, right? So, and there are physical things you can do, and there are energetic things you can do. And I talk about that a lot on the show. I talk about erectile dysfunction a lot because I feel like women, particularly women and men, the lovers of penises, maybe need more information on this so as to not either shame their partners or anything like that. So part of what I've come through in my life with working with bodies and people and sex and all of these other great things is that what I ultimately like to offer people in the planet is a little bit more pleasure. So here we go, the pleasure zone. And this is where one of my favorite platforms to be offering this on. There are other ways I like to do it too, in classes, online classes, and as well as in-person classes. But this is a really great resource, and it's free to all of you on over 250 different locations. So how cool is that? If you happen to be listening to this on a particular location, I'd love to hear it. Just say like, I love listening to you on Spreaker. Let me know. If you actually let me know that, I will gift you. And this is only for this episode, January 3rd, 2022. If you listen to this episode and you say to me, I love listening to you on Spreaker, I love listening to you on iHeart, I love listening to you here or there or anywhere, if you let me know what that is, the first 10 people who let me know are going to get a free session with me. Think about that. That's fun. I just came up with that out of nowhere. So there you go. Welcome, welcome. Merry, happy New Year. Now, one of the things that people love to do in the new year is they love to like reinvent themselves and reinvent their lives. And that's fun and that's cool. And I've never really been a person who does, what are they even called? Resolutions, because to me, it's like there's a solution and then you have to resolute it. Like the word itself makes no sense to me about why would I have a solution and then I would have to resolve it. Why not just go with it the first time? So instead of doing that, what I like to offer instead is not resolution. However, what I like to offer is let's look at what would you like to create this year? Woohoo! Resolutions. I think I did an entire show about resolutions too, and how much the word resolution annoys me. So I'm not going to go into that for the next hour. However, what I will like to play with you with is like looking at your list of pleasure and like how the many hundreds of different ways you can add pleasure. One of my colleagues, Gaia Morissette, who's been on this show a few times, who is also an amazing sex educator, BDSM life coach. She does great work. I just noticed a post of hers on social media recently, and one of her questions out to the public was, what are some things you like to do for pleasure that are non-sexual? People were stumped. People are like, what are you even talking about pleasure? What do you mean? And I'm like, wow, the target in my life is to live a pleasurable life. So I look at things like is the food I'm eating pleasurable for my body? And that would include things like, if the food is pleasurable, then that includes things like that your body can digest it, ingest it, metabolize it. That would be pleasurable rather than being bloated and, having like awful stuff going on in your body where you don't feel well. So pleasure is where you actually are experiencing, this is like physically in your physical body, you're experiencing sensations that are comforting. They have you feel like more enlivened, awakened, and enjoying things. I've given many explanations of pleasure on this show. Repeatedly, I have new variations of pleasure because to me, pleasure is very all encompassing and has so many different ways to approach it. So you might have heard me explain it this way today. You might hear me explain it a different way tomorrow. Why? Because my definition of the day will change on pleasure all the time. So when I'm looking at this next year, what I'm inviting you to do is look at the different places in your life that maybe you're lacking some pleasure. So this list about creating a really cool sex bucket list is really ultimately about creating more of a pleasure list. But you know what? I knew if I put sex bucket list, you guys would come and listen. So you're like, wow, what could you put on your sex bucket list? Well, so many things, and some of them might not even be sexual. What? So for those of you who are like, I don't even know where to start with this whole concept of sex bucket list, I have a free PDF that you can download from Inspired Choices Network. If you go onto my host page, there's a leaderboard that's for do's, don'ts, and maybes list. And that do's, don'ts, and maybes list has, I don't know, about 50 things on it that I use with couples, especially, and people who are looking to go out in the dating world again and seeing what they're interested in. So they can kind of get a clear understanding of themselves in relationship, especially when it comes to sex and sexual activity. And then that list is really handy for this as well. So if you have, or if you have never gone on to get my list, please go and do so. Also, in doing that, I believe you get signed up for my naughty list, which is a lot of fun too. And my naughty list is like ever so delightful, that I send out emails very randomly to those of you who are interested in all things pleasure and different classes and things I'm offering. And I would love to see that list grow to the thousands. That would be so fantastic. So if you haven't already joined my naughty list, please do so. So when I look at the lists for sex, I like to make it easy for myself. And so on the list that I have for the do's, don'ts, and maybes list, I've broken it down to the 5 senses, because for me, it's helpful to kind of break it down to things, and breaking it down to the senses really allowed me to look at it from, it just makes it a lot easier for me to be able to look at it. So for example, on maybe one of your 52 things you'd like to add to your bucket list is to be able to give your lover a massage and receive a massage from your lover. Now, this can be a lot of fun and it can be incredibly healing as well. So, that's the top of our touch list. There are so many things in touch. This topic is huge. Like all these sense topics are huge because our senses are what picks up the information and delivers that information in our body to indicate whether we're experiencing pleasure or pain that is pleasurable, or things that are aggravating. But our body picks it up through our senses to know and to give us information about what to do with that. So our body's brilliant. And when I look at, give each other massages, that's on that list that I have there for free, the free gift list. And if you want to do that, that's fantastic. If you have no idea how to give each other massages, there are some really great videos out in the world that are available for couples to learn couples massage. There are classes you can take. If you're not interested in going out into public to do this, there are actually video lessons that you can find. Just literally go, couples massage lessons, and you'll find some stuff on there. On Netflix, there's a documentary by Gwyneth Paltrow called Sex and Love and Group, or Love and Sex and Group, or something like that. And on that, she's a sex and intimacy coach, and she specializes in touch and the 5 what she has is a touch blueprint. And the touch blueprint is something that I learned also in my sex and intimacy coaching. Actually, the lady that was on that did the lesson for that in my sex and intimacy coaching class. And it's brilliant because it really breaks down between you and your partner what kind of touch you might like. And so she blueprints it down to 5 different types of touch. And I've talked about that also on an episode, so you can go back and listen to the blueprints of touch, specifically the episode dedicated to that if you want more information on that. So that's some ways to go about doing this. Like you might like, I'd really like that, but how? And so the hows come down to information, education, and gathering resources. There's lots of resources in the world. Now, I get that sometimes people are having a really hard time gathering those resources. So I may actually have to invite people into my business so that they can assist me with gathering resources, so I can have a bunch of resources that I really like, recommendations that I like, all in one place, all on my website. So that isn't going to happen today or tomorrow, guys. It may happen in the next year, but you'll be able to find resources of things that I've done, I've taken classes in, that I love, that I recommend. My recommends list for sure. I may do that. I just might do that. Which I need to make a note of because I forget these things. So my recommends list, I'm making a note right now. Recommends list, cool. So now when we look at touch, look at all these different aspects of touch, whether it's the blueprint touch or the massages. And we can also do other things that add sensory touch feelings too, that aren't necessarily hand related. So on that list that I also show is that you could add to your bucket list is using things like silks and satins to rub on the body, to touch the body, to tickle the body, to stroke the body. And you can play with other things too, like different textures and doing things like kisses from head to toe. So I'm not going to go through my entire list with you guys. I welcome you to go grab it, use it, mark down things. And what I'd also like you to do with your bucket list is to look at things, especially sex related, where maybe you've gone like, I really wanted to try this, but I really don't know how to say it. And sometimes writing it first, getting it out of your head and onto paper can be helpful. Saying it to somebody, like true confessions of your big ask, that can be helpful too. And in the first year or two that I had these shows, I had a colleague of mine too, her name is Melanie Clampett. She came on and she talked about the big ask. And the big ask is a really great, not only a really great episode, but it's a really great tool to work with because it can be incredibly freeing. So I encourage you to look at some of your big asks, things that you're like afraid to ask for, but put them on your bucket list. Let's get to them this year. The way I say it and see it is, like I said to my daughter the other day, and she was like concerned about people getting ill and stuff. I'm like, hey, hon, we die. This is what happens. So let's have fun right now in this moment with each other and hang out and laugh and watch shows and do whatever brings you joy. And she's like, oh, okay. I'm like, yeah, we could sit here and cry about dying all day long, or we can go, okay, that happens. And now what? So it did kind of switch her out of it because she was getting a little down in the dumps. But I say this because look at it as if maybe today or tomorrow, what if today or tomorrow was your last day? And would you like to get those big asks in on your bucket list? I know one of my big asks would be like a bukkake festival. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. And I invite people to apply for this. I'm not just taking anybody for a bukkake festival, but I am willing to interview for this. So if you don't know what that is, go research it. It's fun. It's fun for me, maybe not for you, but I encourage it. So go for your big asks and start to put them down on your list. See which ones you are actually really comfortable with bringing forward and inviting into your real life rather than your fantasy life. Because right now that's a really great fantasy for me, but do I really want to invite it into my real life? Maybe not, maybe not. So at least explore it and figure out what some of those things are that you haven't been asking for. That's part of the key to this, is creating the bucket list. Like even when you create any bucket list, you're looking at things you'd really like to try that maybe you've even been afraid to try. for me. One of those is like, I'd really love to go hang gliding. And one day I will. I know that it's got to happen in this lifetime. I love the idea of like flying free and jumping off a cliff and flying. So yes, I know I'll do that. It's on my unwritten bucket list. Some of my ideas are things that are just ideas, and they kind of come fleeting. So I forget to write them down on my bucket list or my asks list for the universe. So remember to write them down, because one of the fun things is to be able to go back to some of these lists and do, wow, like I did that. And it gives you a sense of accomplishment. And with this, looking back on things that are sexual, one of the coolest things that it can do is it can actually reinvoke that pleasure into your body. So these lists aren't just for the sake of it to be like, organized or something, which is great. They also can be helpful in when you go through them after, that you have this energy can rise up again. Your body can invite that energy back in. Kind of like when we talk about some of the exercise where I talk about tapping into your favorite orgasm and running that through your body and then creating that as a bigger energy and expanding that bigger. These memories of your asks on your sexual bucket list are going to be able to be things that you look back on and your body can just enjoy. And those are so fun in moments where you might feel down or out or feeling like lonely or something's going on where you just need a boost. You can go to those sexy bucket lists and go, wow, I have done so many things on my bucket list. I'm so excited that I've done that. I've actually done a lot of things on my sexual bucket list. I mentioned bukkake as one that I haven't done because it is one that I haven't done. So it's just one that's out there, and I'm just going to mention it again. So there you go. So we're going to head to our first commercial break. I'd like you to, during this commercial break, think about like, what is that big ask that you're so ashamed of asking for? And are you willing to put it on that bucket list this year? So you're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet, sweet pleasure seekers. So just before break, we kind of broke down the ideas of like, how do we even create this list? How do we do it? How do we create a list? Because I'm so overwhelmed and I don't have any ideas and I don't know what to do. First of all, head over to inspiredchoicesnetwork.com, go onto my host page, The Pleasure Zone, and at the top or the bottom, there'll be a leaderboard that says do's, don'ts, and maybes list. Click on that. That will give you a really cool start to different ideas. I mentioned some of the ones in touch. I've done things in all the categories of senses. other than the psychic senses, now those get fun because you can also add things that are like tantric energy exchanges as well. I kept that one pretty simple. It's pretty vanilla. And for some people, it might not even be. It might not be vanilla for them. Like, tying your lover up might not be so vanilla, and that's cool. I think because I have so many friends that are way more extreme than that I consider myself kind of vanilla in that way, even though, like I'm saying, my bucket list would have bukkake on it, and my bucket list would have orgies on it. My bucket list would have a lot of things on it. Now, those are my bucket list fantasies, because those are things that I know are like my go-to. Like if you're having one of those like masturbation moments where you're just like, oh, for the love of Jesus, can I just like reach an orgasm? Sometimes that happens. And like you got stresses and your body's not totally relaxed, and you got to like relax your body first to receive that. Relaxing thoughts for me are these thoughts. So there you go. And if you need those thoughts, if you need some ideas, I got lots of ideas and I'm willing to share them with you. So definitely check out the list. Use some of those things on the list if you've never tried them. Like if you've never used silk scarves on your lover, and if you've never like run them up and down their body, tantalizing their body, go for it. If you've never used things like, there's so many things like stones and rocks and sandpaper, like you can use textures of any kind. And when you're doing all of this, if you're doing it with a lover, please remember communication is key, so that you're not doing something to your lover that they don't want and they're not liking. So you want to have that communication going the whole time. Like, hey, do you really like, how does this feel to you? And your bucket list may not be the same as your lover's, and that's okay too. You might actually find that when you create this bucket list, there's a few things you both have in common, where, say, for example, there might be location ideas. And I love location ideas, and I've done shows on that as well. So you can go back and listen to my shows on location ideas to get a lot of the location ideas. However, let's break it down simply to put on your bucket list, just for fun, 5 places that you haven't had sex in your home and 5 places you haven't had sex out of your home. So let's say in your home, 5 places you might not have had sex might be on your washing machine, on your dining room table, maybe in, I'm trying to think of places I haven't had sex, but I have had sex in every place in my house. But front hall, actually I haven't had sex in my front hall. And then maybe my back porch, but that's outside. So I don't know. There's so many ideas. So maybe you haven't had sex up against a wall or in front of the window. Let's do those 5 places in the home. And then 5 places out of your home on your bucket list can include things like maybe in your backyard, or I'm just like thinking of where I've actually done it outside that is not in my home, in a park, in a public bathroom. And even though that's gross, I get that. So in public locations can be fine as long as you don't get caught, right? Now that's key, don't get caught. And well, here's a weird one, and I've never done this, but in a hospital, maybe, your lover's in hospital and you get to go in and visit there. Maybe in jail, I don't know, maybe you guys are into that. I haven't done that either. So those are some things maybe are on your list. Maybe that's something that makes you hot and interested. So add those to your list. Cool. I would go with things like locations, experiences that you haven't had yet. So maybe some experiences that you haven't had are things maybe that you've heard about. Maybe you're like, I've heard that you can do this thing and it's called like ride the wild chimpanzee. I don't even know what that is. I'm making it up, but maybe you've heard of something like this and you're like, I want to try the ride the wild chimpanzee move. And then you go and you investigate and you find out how to pull that off. And maybe your partner's like totally into riding the wild chimpanzee. I might have just invented something really cool and I didn't know about it. And I might be tapping into something that already exists that I somehow read in the whole lot of information that I've ever researched on sex. So I don't know what ride the wild chimpanzee is, frankly, but we're just going to put it out there. So different things like positions can be great to add into the experiences list. Maybe they're positions that you've like to try, maybe they're positions you're afraid to try. I find that depending on the generation and maybe the experience and maybe some of the upbringing, there seems to be some generational gap stuff around the 70s and over, especially if people found loverships when they were fairly young and have stuck with their partners, that sometimes the conversation about things like even about positions is a really big conversation. So having on your bucket list, maybe doggy style, could literally be something on your bucket list that you've never tried. And that's cool. Like, don't make yourself wrong for this. This is also like if you're 18 or 19 years old and you're just new at the game, or maybe you're 50 and you're new at this game, looking at different things that will get your body excited, right? So positions are fantastic for that. And there are great books on positions. Try the Kama Sutra, get it. It's interesting. And there are some really great photos in there. Also the Perfumed Garden, which is also another beautiful old it's ancient text on sex. And it's so the Perfume Garden is Islamic writings on sex, and the Kama Sutra is Hindu writings on sex. So a lot of cultures have these writings, and a lot of them will show some pretty cool positions if positions are something you need. So grab some of those books, get some of that information, check it out online. These are things that you actually need like a visual to kind of see, because even in the ancient texts, there are paintings so that you can see these positions as well. That is helpful. That can help you create your bucket list. Now, you can get even naughtier and you can go into like watching some porn to help you create your naughty list as well. Your naughty list. No, this is your sexy bucket list, but it's a little bit naughty too, let's face it. So looking at different resource materials, like different texts. Also, there's one of The Art of Sexual Ecstasy is a really also great book for referencing positions. It gives some basics on Tantra. So that's also another great way to tap into some ideas if you've never experienced them. And two, for you, maybe on your bucket list is to experience Tantra or to study it. And so this would be on your sexy bucket list, is maybe this year you get to get a course, study some Tantra, and then get your partner to maybe do the same so that you can share the experience. But Tantra can be done for one as well. So you can start that study solo for sure. And even positions can be done solo. Like you can masturbate in many different positions too. So this isn't just for couples. This is for anybody who would like to have a sexy bucket list. Maybe, like I mentioned earlier, adding things like more lovers into the game can be part of the play too. So if that's something you're like, I really want a threesome, put it on your bucket list, see how you can accomplish that. Now, adding any more lovers to the game, if you've already got a relationship where it's a little bit strained, adding other lovers is not going to improve it, I'll tell you that much. So you got to work on yourself, numero uno, and then your relationship with your other as number two. And then if you guys are stable enough to add more lovers, and then that's a whole different conversation. And if you need facilitation on how you do that, you can connect with me so that you can have much more of an easy time with it, because there is likely, chances are pretty high, there are going to be some issues that arise. And I've done shows on that too. So go back and listen to some of my shows about threesomes as well, so that you can hear about that. Also, I think I did an interview with somebody who wrote a book called Tutti Frutti. His name's David Lasowski, and he actually writes a lot about, well, in this particular book, he wrote about not necessarily threesomes, but the idea of having more than one lover. So wow, that word's escaping me right now, but it's where you, anyways, it's escaping me. Let's just move on from that. So it's going to bug me, but it's escaped me. So having multiple lovers, multiple love relationships to, so it's not monogamy, it's polygamy, polyamory. That's the word. I knew I needed to say it out loud to get it out of my system. And so maybe polyamory is on your list to experience as well, which is a little different than just threesomes. Polyamory does involve relationships of having, there's different configurations of relationships for polyamory. So did shows on that too. So you can go back and listen if that's something you're interested in. Now, one of the cool things is I have like over 300 shows archived. You could literally scroll through all of my titles, and I bet you're going to come up with some ideas that you'd like to add to your bucket list. And there may be things that I've never even talked about that you'd like to add to your bucket list, but that's another way to do your research to figure out what you would like to add to your sex bucket list. So remember, your senses are what's going to be engaged in this. Your body and your senses will be engaged in all of these things. So include things that will evoke and invite your senses to be like awakened and heightened. Locations can do that. Positions can do that, and adding people can do that. So when we look at our sex bucket list, it's to look at like all the things and ways that we can have more fun and more pleasure with our lives, and do it in a way that's kind to yourself, kind to your lovers. This is not about like just being a jackass and going out and like, I don't care, I'm doing what I want. Be considerate, be kind, and be an invitation to greater pleasure, not greater distress and stress, right? So all of these things are great for having conversations about. So we will come back and we're going to talk more about creating your sexy bucket list after this commercial break. Stay tuned in to the Inspired Choices Network.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Interested in masturbating for money, copulating for consciousness, and pleasuring on purpose? 21 Days of Sexual Magicism with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic is an exploration of tools, processes, and actions that you can use to create more for your life, your body, your money inflows, and so much more. Graduated learning for all levels of interest. Learn at your own pace via video classes or join the yearly live class. Take a peek at www.milicajelenic.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is the Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@MilicaJelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet, sweet pleasure seekers. Today we are talking about creating a sex bucket list. Sexy sex bucket list filled with pleasure. How fun is that? So if you're just joining in now, you will have, I encourage you to go back and listen to the rest of the show because they're, giving a lot of tips and tools on where you can find research materials, how you can develop these lists, what some of the things you might want to include in your list. Because sometimes we forget, we start making a list and we're like, yeah, I just want blowjobs every day. And you know what? That's another thing about your bucket list is it can be things you've already done, but you'd like more frequency of it, or you might like it done in a different way. So for example, you might have already had oral sex in your life, but you're like, but I'd like oral sex done in a swimming pool while my partner wears a snorkel. And yeah, in the moonlight, and it's going to be awesome. And like, you can get creative. That visual is really nice to me. I haven't tried that yet. Have had underwater, but not with a snorkel and with like goggles on. Now that sounds fun. Now the snorkel would be useless, let's face it, unless you're like going in for air, but then it's filled with water. But there's something cute about a snorkel, let's face it. It's cute. So look at all these different locations, and like I'd mentioned, parks and this and that, swimming pools. If you happen to have your own swimming pool or hot tub or something like that, that's also a fun way to add and spice things up a little bit. So this isn't just about spicing things up, this list. So this list is really about tapping into some of the parts of you that you're not even aware of, like parts of your pleasure that you're like hiding from yourself. And you might, start making the list and you're like, oh, as I'm making this list, I realize like what I really want to do is spank some butts. And you're like, that would be so yummy. How do I get to spank some butts? Now, the thing about these lists is that if you do have a partner and your partner is not interested in these things, then there needs to be some negotiation done on whether it's okay for you to be going out and seeking these activities with other people. And why I have my do's, don'ts, and maybes list is because some of these things are good to get out of your system on that list first to see, is this something that as a couple that your partner would even be willing to do? So using that do's, don'ts, maybes list, possibly writing that out, sorting it out. I basically give a list and then you just fill in some blanks on that and see where things go. Now, if you both have things in your do's column, things you'd really like to do, or your maybes column that are shared, put them on your bucket list and then start to go from there, because the things on the don'ts list, they may take a while to negotiate and they may never be negotiable. There are things that are on my don'ts, like my hard no list, that are, I feel in this 10 seconds of my life, are always going to be a hard no. I don't have any like fantasies about getting pooped on. Like that's something that I don't find turns me on, but it might turn you on, and that's cool. So you got to know that about you. And so there are lots of different things to consider when making your list. And also if you're making your list, that's something that you'd like to share with your lover, that you have some mutual things on that list that are things that you can do together. Now, one of the other ways you can do this list doesn't have to be a formal list. You can get scraps of paper and get a jar, and as your day goes on, you don't have to like sit and take 2 hours to write this down, right? Get a jar, get some scraps of paper beside the jar and a pen, and as ideas pop, write them down, stick them in the jar. And you could do this for you. You can do this as a couple too. Like you can both put things in the list, in the jar. And if you do know what your do's, don'ts, and maybes are, then you can be honoring to your partner and not keep pushing for things that maybe your partner is never going to say yes to, and maybe they're not okay with, and they really don't want to be pressured into. So you might find, through your do's, don'ts, maybes list, that you both have like more frequent oral sex, and then you both stick it into the jar, and one day you're pulling it out of the jar and you're like, woohoo. And so I encourage you to come up with 52 so that you have at least one a week that you get to enjoy with each other. Now, they might even get very kinky. Like you might have some kink in there that's like, you would like your partner to dress up like royalty and sip tea while you suck on their toes. And there is no actual penetration going on. It's just full kink. So what kind of kink are you not even aware that you might be into, that you could be into, that would actually allow you to like free yourself and have far more pleasure than you ever imagined? So kink can be a really fun way to add to your sexy playlist. Now, kink can be as simple. Kink to me is everything beyond missionary. And So that everything beyond missionary would be considered some level of kink. Now, it's interesting. I'm saying that because from, the DSM-3 and probably the DSM-3, which is a diagnostic tool for psychological uh, evaluations, they even until the 90s had homosexuality under the DSM as a perversion. So things that are so average every day to us were considered very like perverse back in the day. And these things might all be things that are on our lists, and they are sort of kinky. Anything that's not anything that is not missionary is kink. Woohoo! And so maybe you would like to have an experience with somebody of the same sex or a different sex or a different gender identification than you identify with, or that you normally would be engaging in sexual activity with. So you might find that, you know what, this year I'd really like to experience, you know, intimate sexual relations with somebody who's trans. And so put it out there and maybe see what shows up. It's actually, you'll probably find more surprising than not that there is quite an interest out there for gender gender bending and experiencing different genders sexually, and being with as many variations and possibilities as possible. I don't know how else to word that other than that. So and being open to it, not, and also being kind about it. So treating this as it is, as a relationship in the moment, so that you're honoring of yourself and the other person as well. So when you look at some things for kink, you might just go, you know what, for this year, I'm going to add to my bucket list a little something called tie me up and spank me good. Cool, put that on your bucket list. So you might find too that you have a lover or partner that doesn't really ever want to tie you up, and or they're like, I don't know. And then that part of that comes down to giving them a little education to show them that this is not actually hurting you, that this is a pleasure tool, that this is what it does for you. Because ultimately, if you tell your lover that this is a pleasure tool, they may be squeamish at first, and they may be squeamish for months, but the more you reiterate, this is actually pleasure for me. Anybody who is trying to or would like to be your lover will probably be willing to engage in that activity with you. They might not want them themselves. They might not want you to beat them. And that's, that's cool. Like, don't spank them, but you like to be spanked. So invite that conversation up, and it might take a few conversations and a few explanations of this is pleasure for me. So being okay with that. It's really funny. These are, when I first started dating my husband, we had the most random, intense conversations, probably in the first 5 dates. We brought up everything from future things like children, lives, marriage, to every kind of different sex kink we could think of. We just laid it all on the table like a bunch of weirdos. This isn't normally how people operate, by the way. They don't usually lay it all out all at once, but it worked for me, it worked for him. So that's helpful too. So when you are creating your bucket list, it's helpful to know you and to know your partner, and to have those things, these guidelines that you can work with. And if it is something that your partner is not willing to do, and it's something you desperately feel like you need to do to free yourself, then you need to have the conversation with your partner about that. And if they're not willing to participate, to see how that lands with you doing that with somebody else. So honoring all of those situations. So I hope that I'm bringing up some ideas, randomly spitting some things out here at you that might get you intrigued and interested in creating a bucket list. It's fascinating that when you look at it, you're like, look at my list. It's so fun. And if part of your list is to share your list, feel free to send me your list, and I'd be happy to look at it and give you praise and whatever you'd like. If you're looking for praise, I'll give you praise for it. If you're looking for me to spank you down on it, I'll do that too. It's whatever you're looking for your list. But if you feel like you would like approval of your list and you'd like to send it my way, you can send it to me via email. So you can find my email contact on my website, milicajelenic.com. If you are really stumped and you don't know how to make this list, even after this show, and you would just really like somebody to facilitate that, please do connect with me and we'll see if we're fit for me to coach you through some of these things. Then to also have the list and how to follow through on it and how to actualize your list. So that will be another thing, is about actualizing your bucket list is the next segment of the show. How do we actualize this bucket list? So you're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email. info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet, sweet pleasure seekers. Today we are talking about creating your sex bucket list, and not only creating it, actualizing it. How do we have this stuff come to life? So once you've got your list, a few things you can do with it. One of them is you can discuss this with your lover partner and look at your list, your mutual list, especially the things you might have in common on these, and actually plan it. I know this sounds linear and it sounds very boring, but one of the things about planning is that it also gives you something to look forward to. And it also, for me, when I have things planned, it's really funny because even if I say plan to paint my house, I will have done the painting of my house in my mind about 50 times before I even get to it. So it's not that I have an expectation, it's my body has experienced it to the point sometimes where even with painting, my body will hurt. So with painting, I'm better off just saying I'm going to do it tomorrow and just have that one night of blending. But sexual pleasure things, it's a lot of fun to actually plan these so that your body looks forward to it. And then it invites that energy in, and it builds the energy, and it builds it more, and it builds it more, and it builds it more. Not the expectation, just the energy. We're building the orgasmic energy so that when you are in the context of the thing that you're asking for in your bucket list, is that when you're in that energy for so many days and your body's vibrating at that super high level of orgasmic energy, and your partner's maybe doing the same thing, the experience will be heightened. It'll be more fun, and it'll be more free because you may have already experienced it in your mind 20 times. So you don't have the shock or anything going on with that. You've already experienced it. Your body can already feel like it's accustomed to it. So it's anticipating it and excited, and at the same time very comfortable. So that's a lot of fun to keep that in mind too. So you can schedule these things. Absolutely. Get out your 52 ideas. You can also put them on playing cards. Buy an empty deck, or get some blank business cards and write your ideas, your 52 ideas on some playing cards. Now that might be something that I choose to make in the future. But I do know that they already exist out there, so you can go out and find them. They aren't necessarily dedicated to bucket lists, but having your own that you can write on for your own personalized bucket list can be helpful. You can also, like I was mentioning earlier, put them in a jar, put the ideas into a jar, and then, it's Friday night. This is really great for couples who do have scheduled sex as well, so that you are the day of, you're like, cool, let's pick out what we're doing tonight. Woohoo. And it kind of gives you a little anticipation and excitement and thrill for what you're going to look forward to. And how many times, in a relationship do you find like the energy just kind of gets wonk and slow and you're just like, I don't even know what I want to do anymore with this person. This bucket list can invoke whole new energy into the relationship, and it can brighten things up, and it can get excitement going again. So we do bucket lists for so many things, to create more joy in our lives, to feel accomplished in our lives. And the same thing is true for our sexy bucket lists. They're here to create more joy in our lives. They're here to create more pleasure in our life. They're here to invoke and bring us a sense of accomplishment. So even with sex, we often, believe it or not, want to feel accomplished, and bucket lists can help you feel accomplished, where you're like, yeah, I'm actually this, and like, I'm not so lame as I thought I was. As I did have a lover once who pretty much proclaimed I was lame. And then I started looking back and going, well, just because I didn't do these things with you, I'm actually not that lame. Interesting. But also that lover was a very interesting invitation for me to get, that one of my capacities was something he couldn't receive. Cool. Because that was the only person who ever told me that. Interesting. So when we create our bucket lists, also, so I mentioned a few things, looking at your senses, looking at locations, looking at different things like positions, looking at different relationships you might want to add in, even if it's just energetically fantasizing about people, costumes, scenarios. Oh, there's so many things. Scenarios can be so much fun. And I've talked about that on an episode as well. And again, like I was saying earlier, if you really have no idea what to do, scroll back through my list of 300 and something shows. There are going to be things that pop out at you. There's even a show on superhero sex. So you might find, that was with my nephew. That was an interesting conversation. My nephew's in his 20s, by the way, but so there you go. But having a conversation even about that can be fun too for the nerds out there. It's like, let's dress and cosplay. Awesome. All of that stuff can be on your bucket list. And now to actualize it, you can plan to actualize it. That's what you do. You're like, this is what we will do on this day, and this is what we're going to do. That's how easy actualizing is you choose it and then it shows up. Now you could make that list and never refer to it, and you still might have something show up, or you could make that list and plan for it to show up. And I see that too for me in life in general. When I make things like lists to accomplish, is all I got to do is choose the thing on the list, and then I can accomplish it. Whether that is making a list of chores to do around the home, I can make that list and never touch it and never touch anything around the house. Or I could make that list and I could actually participate, and then I'll accomplish some of these things and I can check them off the list and go, ta-da, I did it. I accomplished this. That's what lists are helpful for. You can make them all you like, but if you actually don't follow through and take an action or make a choice about them, they're kind of useless. So how do you actualize your list? You make a choice. You choose into it, you step into it. And then for those of you who are like, I don't even know how to choose that. I don't know how to choose. I just don't know. And I don't know why you have that accent when you don't know how to choose, but you do. I can hear it. And so you might be like, I don't know how to choose. Then you might have engaging, you might want to engage in a conversation with your partner and say, look, I don't even know how to choose right now. Can you choose for us? And that might be part of your bucket list, is surrendering. So if your bucket list is surrender this year, you might pass the list over to your lover and get them to say, oh, these are the 52 things I would like to try with you this year. And how much fun can we have? Or these are the 52 things I'd like to try in front of you this year. How much fun can we have? So lots of different ways to accomplish this. If you don't know how to make a choice and you want to surrender, pass it over. If all you ever do is make choices and you don't really want to choose this, pass it over. But whatever you do, include this in your life so that you can have more pleasure. So stay tuned in. And remember, guys, stay turned on until next week when we're going to have a great topic, I'm sure.
Thank you for listening to The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. The Pleasure Zone returns next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have the best week of your life by choosing to be turned on and tuned in to your body.